10 Dark Nursery Rhymes. Hey guys, Culture here. Today we'll be discussing 10 dark nursery rhymes. More specifically, we'll look at the origin and hidden meaning behind these seemingly innocent stories. Nursery rhymes are one of those weird things that we all seem to learn when we're young, yet have absolutely no use for past the age of 5. So let's look at some of the twisted reasons some of these stories have become ingrained in our collective consciousness. Number 1. Humpty Dumpty is a popular nursery rhyme character depicted as an anthropomorphic egg, sitting on a wall and then shattering to pieces once he falls off of it. Personally, I remember Humpty Dumpty from the kids' TV show Play School, where he was way less cool than Big Ted and Little Ted. If you look at the poem he's from, however, Humpty Dumpty is never actually described physically. The most obvious dark explanation for this nursery rhyme is that it's the story of an actual man who fell asleep and plummeted to his death. In reality, there are actually numerous theories about the rhyme's origin. The most popular and likely theory comes from the use of the phrase Humpty Dumpty as 1500s British slang for a fat person. During the Second English Civil War in 1648, there was a mounted cannon on the roof of a church in Colchester that was incredibly large and immovable. Therefore, it was nicknamed Humpty Dumpty. The story goes that the man operating the cannon, Jack Thompson, fought off many parliamentarians in the siege of Colchester and drew the enemy's ire. Thompson came under heavy fire, which eventually destroyed the tower he was mounted upon, bringing him and Humpty Dumpty crashing down. Of course, the cannon could no longer be put back together again. Another theory states that the original rhyme was more of a children's riddle rather than a story, prompting the listener to guess what Humpty Dumpty was. The answer was an egg, leading to his depiction as an egg later on by Lewis Carroll in Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There. Number 2. Ring Around the Rosie is a popular example of a children's song that is rumoured to have a dark story attached to it. In the most famous British version, the song ends with the lyrics, a tissue, we all fall down, which apparently sounds like people sneezing before keeling over and dying. This interpretation leads to the urban myth that this rhyme is about the Black Death, an outbreak of bubonic plague that killed 1/3 of the human population in mid-14th century Europe. In this case, Ring Around the Rosie means some sort of lesion or bruise, and Pocket Full of Posies relates to the spices used by plague doctors to keep themselves from smelling the bad air of quarantined plague zones. However, this idea is largely discredited, and with good reason. Firstly, the poem first appeared in written form in 1881, in Kate Greenaway's Mother Goose or The Old Nursery Rhymes. That means the poem would need to have existed for 500 years without anyone committing it to print. Highly unlikely. Secondly, many other forms of the poem exist that don't contain any of the plague imagery. This is true for both English versions and versions in other languages. It may be that Ring Around the Rosie is just a fun-sounding child's rhyme, but the plague interpretation is clearly interesting enough to have piqued our interest. Number 3. Baa Baa Black Sheep is a nursery rhyme in which the singer asks the titular sheep if it has any wool. It responds by telling them how much it has, as well as where it will distribute it. The version commonly sung nowadays says the master, the dame, and the little boy each receive one bag. However, the oldest surviving version, written in 1744, states that the sheep has 2 bags for the master, 1 for the dame, but none for the little boy who cries down the lane. Obviously, this version is much sadder, explaining why it was changed for use as a kid's song. But some people believe there is also a political message behind the lyrics. In the late 13th century, a heavy tax on wool trade was implemented by King Edward I to fund his military ventures. As such, the money gained from selling the wool would no longer stretch to accommodate the needs of the poor, or, in other words, the little boy. Of course, the more recent interpretation you may have heard is that the rhyme is about the slave trade. This notion is just ridiculous, however. It has no basis in historical fact. In any case, if it were true, the black wool is actually more valuable, as it doesn't need to be dyed to make dark clothes. Unfortunately, we've already had some people in Oxfordshire change the lyrics to Baa Baa Rainbow Sheep, so all logic has gone out the window at this point. Number 4. Goosey Goosey Gander involves a narrator wondering where he will go, whereupon he finds an old man and pushes him down a flight of stairs. Some claim that this is about King Henry VIII, creator of the Church of England and serial wife divorcer. When he couldn't get divorced under the Catholic Church, King Henry created the Church of England and decreed that everyone should follow him. During this time, Catholic priests were treated harshly and even executed if found, and so they often hid in priest holes, essentially secret spaces in the houses of their friends. It's possible that the old man who wouldn't say his prayers is a Catholic priest hiding from the wrath of the Protestants, and throwing him down the stairs is a reference to the punishment that Henry would impose. A more risque interpretation of the poem suggests that goose is euphemism for a prostitute. In this case, the poem is about a dirty old man found in the brothel owner's lady's chamber. Number 5. Rockabye Baby is a lullaby that many mothers sing to their children when putting them to sleep. Of course, it's not hard to imagine how this lullaby could be dark, when it literally involves a baby falling out of a tree. But perhaps surprising is just how many theories there are as to the lullaby's true meaning. It's possible that the story could be another political allegory from days of old. Preceding the historical event known as the Glorious Revolution, the then King of England, James II, was about to have his first heir. Controversy surrounded the incident though, as people gossiped that someone else's child was smuggled into the birthing room to provide James II with a Roman Catholic heir to the throne. This heir would be the baby in the lullaby, while the wind refers to James II's nephew, William of Orange, who was a Protestant. He deposed James II, causing the cradle, or the family line, to fall. A less convoluted explanation suggests that the poem was written by an English immigrant to America who witnessed the Native American way of life. It was common for women to place their babies in cradles hung from tree branches, with the wind rocking their child to sleep. Of course, that would make the last line quite literal, and still quite dark. Number 6. Three Blind Mice has sometimes been attributed to Mary I of England, though the earlier versions of the song don't appear until long after her death. This rhyme is another case of Catholic-Protestant hatred for one another. If only all fights were settled this way with cheery children's rhymes. In the revised version, the three mice have their tails cut off by the farmer's wife with a carving knife. Some have said that the three mice are Protestant bishops, with their blindness being their spiritual blindness according to the Catholic Church. The farmer's wife could be Mary herself, as she had three individuals known as the Oxford Martyrs executed. She didn't chop them up or blind them though, as they were burned at the stake. Number 7. The rhyme Who Killed Cock Robin essentially consists of how different animals are involved in the death and subsequent funeral procession of Cock Robin. There are plenty of political interpretations akin to the other nursery rhymes we've discussed so far, but Who Killed Cock Robin has a particularly odd association. It's possible that the song is actually an allusion to the Norse story of Ragnarok. This tale is quite dark because it's literally about the murder of the god of light. In the original tale, Loki, god of trickery, convinces the blind god Hoda to shoot an arrow at his brother, letting him think that it would bounce off of him harmlessly. Unfortunately, the arrow was the only thing that could harm Balder, and he dies, leading the world into an extended period of winter and darkness. Number 8. Rub-a-dub-dub, like many other nursery rhymes, appears to be quite nonsensical, with it being about three men in a tub and sailing in it, but the original version actually puts three maids in the tub. Finally, a rhyme with a little bit of sauciness behind its meaning. The setting is a local fair with a peep show, and the rhyme asks the listener who they thought were there. So the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker weren't all pulling around on a fantastic voyage, but all three of them were instead watching quite the spectacle, seeing some young ladies take a bath. And here I was thinking that three men taking a bath together out at sea was a joke about the Navy. I'm gonna catch some flack for that joke, aren't I? Number 9. Pop Goes the Weasel delights children and scares the living daylights out of anyone who has ever used a jack-in-the-box for 200 years. But if those who listen to it are like the monkey and think it's all in good fun, they are mistaken. If you're like me, you've probably never realized the song even had lyrics, but indeed it does. About 5 verses actually. Many versions of this song exist, but all talk about financial situations, including lines like, "A penny for a spool of thread, a nickel for a needle, that's the way the money goes." The song is mostly about the hard times people suffer when trying to make a living in a poor economic environment. The Weasel is a mechanical thread measuring device used by people in the textiles industry to get the right length of yarn. It makes a pop sound when the correct length is reached, so it could be that each verse is a daydreaming thought by the worker, who is suddenly plunged back into reality by the pop sound. A later version of the song even adds in disease to the mix. Jimmy's got the whooping cough and Timmy's got the measles. Yeesh, come on people, lighten it up a little bit. Number 10. Even Row 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 Your Boat has a seedy backstory. Earlier publications of the song are associated with American minstrel shows, known for their use of blackface. But besides this association, the song is really an allegory for life itself. The most basic interpretation is that time carries onward whether we like it to or not, and that all we can do is row with it and take on a positive mindset. The last line, "Life is but a dream," is kind of sad when you think about it. It's an illusion we put up. We construct meaning to give our lives, when in reality we're all just flowing down a stream towards, well, the inevitable. If you ask me, a nursery rhyme about the senseless nature of life is the darkest topic one could imagine. Or hey, it could just be a jaunty tune about how peaceful it is to take in nature as you travel down a river. Yeah, let's go with that. See you all next week. If you enjoy what we do here at CultureCrash, please consider supporting the show via our Patreon, where we have a bunch of awesome rewards, or by checking out our online store. All links are in the description below.